All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I know a lot of people are still lingering over at the Student Center after that remarkable keynote address. I think that's what all keynote addresses need to be like, something that inspires you to want to go out and knock the walls down. And so, but we're going to continue in that vein with this next panel. But before I do so, we found some keys over by the coffee area. So if anybody's looking for keys, we'll make an announcement a little bit later as well. If someone has lost their keys, they probably won't notice till they try to go drive away, but we've got them here. The title of this panel is Latina Political Engagement, Power, Consciousness, and Limits. And I have to say that I feel actually very, very happy and very blessed to have three very good friends on this panel that come from three very distinctly different arenas, but that are all political in nature. From an academic to somebody who's maybe somewhat in between to somebody who's actually a practitioner. And so I'm going to introduce the panel in order of their presentations. You can see the titles in the program, and you've got the bios as well, so we'll dispense with that. But our first speaker today will be Melissa Michelson, Professor of Political Science at Menlo College in California. Our second speaker is Emanuel Pleitez, former candidate for mayor of Los Angeles and chair of the Hispanic Heritage Foundation. And the third speaker today is my good friend here from Omaha, Nebraska, Sergio Sosa, who's the executive director of the Heartland Worker Center. And so with that, Melissa, it's all yours.
I'm going to need technical assistance.
Sorry.
I know you're so excited to hear the talk. Cool.
There it is.
Thank you. And there's the clicker. And can I hold on? Can I use this instead? All right. So thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I'm excited to be here to talk about the work that I've been doing on Latino voter mobilization. It's something that I've been doing for about 12 years now, and I think I've picked up a few things. I'm going to share with you some highlights from a big project that I just finished up a little while ago. So. The title of this slide says pre-CVI. The CVI is an abbreviation for the California Votes Initiative. Some years ago, back in 2005, the James Irvine Foundation, which is the largest private foundation in California, decided that they were very concerned about disparities between the population of California and the voters of California. The people who were voting in California were overwhelmingly white, and the population of California was becoming increasingly not white. So they wanted to do something to fix this problem. They did an RFP for academics to come oversee the work, and then an RFP from community organizations who were engaging in communities of color in California, Latino, African American, and Asian Pacific Islander, to work together, bringing together community organizations and academics to study how do we increase voter turnout in low-income communities of color in California. How do we make the electorate of California look more like the people of California? Before the project launched, some Get Out the Vote work had already been done, mostly on general communities. The first work that was done was in New Haven, Connecticut, where Yale University is, because the academics who did the work were from Yale University. And then I did some work in Central California with with Latino populations in Dos Palos and Fresno. There's really very little that had been done there. So we thought we knew what worked to get out the vote, but it had all pretty much been done with general populations. We knew that door-to-door worked. We knew that that would increase voter turnout among contacted groups by about 7 to 10 percentage points. We knew that phone banking worked, that you could increase turnout by calling people on the phone by maybe 3 to 5%. And it seemed like sending people stuff in the mail, leaving things on their doorsteps, didn't work at all. So the question for the California Votes Initiative was, would that work in communities of color? I had done a couple of experiments in California with Latinos and showed that it did work, but of course, those were small elections in just a couple of cities. I did some experiments with Acorn in Bridgeport and Phoenix with Latino and Black populations, and again, it seemed like that worked. But that's it. That's all we had for door-to-door experiments before the California Votes Initiative. Ricardo Ramirez had done an experiment with Naleo to try to get out the vote with phone banking, and it didn't work. And so already we had a big question as the CVI launched. How come we can get out the vote in the general population by calling them, but calling Latinos doesn't work, right? So already we knew that not necessarily everything we thought we knew about getting out the vote for the general population was going to work in these communities of color, and we needed to know more. The James Irvine Foundation made grants to 9 community organizations, and I'll show you who those were on the next slide. Over the course of 6 election cycles, June 2006, November 2006, 2007 local elections in Los Angeles, and then February, June, and November 2008, we conducted experiments with more than 1 million voters in the state of California. We conducted 268 separate experiments with our 9 community organizations and their sub-organizations. After the 2007 election, we're kind of regrouping. Okay, we've done these 3 election cycles, and we've got groups that look like they're doing the same thing. We've got experiments by the same organization, but in different cities, and on paper it looks like the same thing, but this one worked and this one didn't. What the heck is going on? So we hired 24 students to be our eyes and ears on the ground, and we sent them out into the field to work as our observers with these organizations, and they collected over 3,000 hours of observations, walking door to door with the canvassers, sitting in the same room as the phone bankers, listening to what was going on, going to the trainings, going to all the meetings, and then reporting back to us what they found out so that we could talk about not only the quantitative data that we had collected based on what was done and who voted, but also the qualitative information about the quality of the work that groups were doing. These are the organizations that we worked with that targeted Latino organizations in particular. There were also a couple more that targeted Asian American Pacific Islander organizations, and some of these you've probably heard of. The Center for Community Action and Environmental Justice is a group in the Inland Empire of Southern California based in Riverside County. The Central American Resource Center is probably familiar to at least some of you, is a well-known group in the Pico Union neighborhood of Los Angeles. NALEO, of course. The Pacific Institute for Community Organization, which is a congregation-based organization that works in communities all over the state of California, and we worked with them specifically in the Central Valley, the Sacramento Valley, and also in LA. So they did quite a number of experiments based on their congregations. Southwest Voter, of course, another one that you might have heard of, and then Strategic Concepts in Organizing and Policy Education, which is based in South LA, the rebranded South Central LA, and that used to be a pretty much Black community, but has transformed over the years to become a mixed Black and Latino community. And so CCA, EJ, and SCOPE were mobilizing both Black and Latino voters. Carez and Naleo and Southwest Voter focused on Latino communities, and PICO targeted everybody who went to church. So it had some Latinos as well. So we did these 268 field experiments. We actually did more than 268, but 268 are in the book. We actually did over 300 experiments, but for some of them, there were data problems or whatever happened. And we found that just as with the general population, door-to-door is the most powerful way to get out the vote. If you go to someone's house in a community, in a low-income, low-turnout community, and talk to the voter and invite them to participate, they will vote. And I need to pause for a minute to point out to you how amazing that is, because the conventional wisdom from campaign managers and experts on winning elections is don't waste your time going to those neighborhoods. They don't vote. Go to the wealthy neighborhoods, right? And we weren't doing much. We weren't telling them who to vote for. We weren't helping them fill out a voter registration form. We weren't doing anything except going up to them and saying, hi, Jonathan, you know there's an election on Tuesday. Can I count on you to vote? And he'd say yes. And the little canvasser would mark yes on the sheet and say, thank you very much, and go to the next house. And that works. And it's amazingly powerful. In Riverside County, in June of 2006, in the home precincts where CCAEJ had been working for 25 years on issues of environmental justice, they went door to door in their core precincts, their core 5 precincts. They would go to someone's house and say, hi, I'm here from CCAEJ, and people said, oh, I love you guys. You're Penny Newman's group. I love what you've been doing to fight, the incinerator. I love what you've been doing to fight the new dump. And then on election day, those canvassers went back to the neighborhoods at about 5 o'clock in the morning, meaning to leave pieces of paper on people's doorsteps to remind them that they had promised to vote. They ended up running into people because they were awake and taking out the garbage or whatever, because people are awake, apparently, in the Inland Empire at 5 o'clock in the morning. And turnout increased by 43 percentage points. Exactly. Wow. Holy crap. That's really good, right? They were a little disappointed that they never hit 43% again over the rest of the election cycles. We tried to explain to them that that was really quite unusual. And they should be proud, not disappointed, that they only were hitting, 15% the next time. It's, God, so embarrassing. We also found that phone banks were very powerful, and we learned some really interesting stuff about phone banks. One of the things we learned from our qualitative data is that from the observers walking around door to door and listening in on the phone banks, is that phone banks can be better than going door to door because you can supervise a phone bank and you can ensure that the quality of the conversations with voters are of high quality and are consistent, right? If you're sitting, we just had an election in California, so we just did this last weekend, right? If you're sitting in the room with your 10 students and they're making phone calls and you can hear one of them going off script or saying something inappropriate or basically doing it wrong, after that phone call you can say, hey, just want to remind you, this is how we're doing it today. This is what I need you to do for me. You're doing an awesome job, but just, be careful of this one thing. And you send somebody out going door to door for 4 hours, you have no freaking idea what they are saying. And it turns out that a lot of our folks from these community organizations that were going door to door were not particularly good at it. Turns out we had folks who were monolingual Spanish going door to door to houses and then not being able to communicate with the English monolingual voter who answered the door. Or we had kids who were chewing gum and leaning against the door jambs while they were talking to voters. That's really, or they forgot which group they were working for. They couldn't tell the voter what CCAEJ stood for. They mixed up the letters. Or they, so stuff was happening. And it turns out you might really be good at reading maps, and of course your phone tells you now. Turns out a lot of people don't know that odd-numbered houses and even-numbered houses are on the opposite side of the street. So they'd be going back and forth looking for a house. It was across the street. So quality control is a lot better in phone banks, and if you do quality control in a phone bank, you can make it more effective than a door-to-door campaign, especially if you call them back. So we did our first round of experiments in 2006, and Southwest Voter came back with huge numbers, just enormously powerful at getting out the vote. And we're just like, what are you doing? You're doing something that's working better than what the other groups are doing. What's your secret sauce? Well, they were calling folks again, right? So they'd call somebody a couple weeks before the election and say, can I count on you to vote? Jonathan would say, yes, of course. And the night before Election Day, I'd call him back and say, hey, Jonathan, we talked a couple weeks ago. You're going to vote tomorrow, right? Of course. And we get double-digit increases in voter turnout. Now, if you'll remember, the traditional increase of voter turnout from a door-to-door campaign is 7 to 10%. But you call somebody twice, and we get 11 to 13 percentage point increases in turnout of low-income, low-propensity voters. right? Not just, the likely voters, people who don't vote. We are getting to vote by calling them twice. Because, he promised me. And I've known Jonathan for a while, but I could do it to anybody. And if you promise a complete stranger that you're going to vote, there's something psychological that goes on. You go, well, I promised that nice girl who called me that I would vote. And I'm the kind of person who does what I say I'm going to do. And you've already in your mind imagined yourself voting. It's already happened. So on election day, you go, right? And when I call you back, you're like, oh, right, I promised. You go vote. So it's hugely powerful. Third big thing we found out is that neighbors are better than strangers. The reason that CCAEJ had such a powerful effect in June of 2006 is because the people who were going door to door were from the community and were known. We're from a trusted community organization, and we're neighbors who lived in the right? The promotoras who were doing the canvassing were from the neighborhood. And so we tested this, right? There's 268 experiments. We got to test a lot of things. And we tested it a couple more times with some different communities and different elections, and it works, right? If you canvass somebody from your neighborhood, even if someone you don't know, but it's your neighborhood, you are more effective. And if you canvass from a trusted organization, one that didn't just, helicopter in for the election and then they're going to be gone for 4 years, it's more effective, right? And so we actually did one experiment where we were able to track individual people as they got closer to their own neighborhood and then as they walked away. And you can see their efficacy of getting out the vote increase as they get closer to their house and then weaken as they walk away. Maybe they recognize each other from the grocery store. Maybe they've seen them walking their dog. We don't really know what it is. The canvassers didn't report that it was because they personally knew people, but it was their neighbor. Maybe it was because they knew where all the houses were. We don't know, but it works better. It works better to use your neighbors, right? And then, this is not in the book, but afterwards we did some additional evaluation of the data, and we found that nativity matters. Going to Latinos who were born in the United States, calling them or going to their houses and asking them to vote works better than trying to turn out immigrant voters because immigrant Latinos already vote more. They've already been mobilized by the political situation that's going on, right? The context of American politics right now has mobilized Latino immigrants, and their turnout now far exceeds native-born Latinos. Mm-hmm. But native-born Latinos are extremely susceptible to being invited to vote. And so your most effective use of resources to get out the Latino vote is actually to focus on native-born Latinos. So we found these wonderful things out. We found out lots of other things too, but I have 4 minutes left. I want to go back to this idea that this shouldn't work, right? If I call you up and I talk to you for 30 seconds, or I come to your house and talk to you for 2 seconds, you didn't become wealthier. Your level of education didn't increase. The level of social capital in your community didn't increase. None of the predictors that we have for getting people to vote changed, right? We have all these political science models that say that, well, the more education you have, the more likely you are to vote. If you're married, you're more likely to vote. If you own a home, you're more likely to vote. We didn't change anybody's marital status, right? We didn't give anybody a grant. So why did they vote, right? We didn't change anything about them that logically should lead to a change in their behavior. But what we think we did do is we changed the way that they think of themselves. We changed their conception of themselves. So remember, we're going to these low-income, low-propensity communities. And some of these experiments were done, for example, during the November 2008 election, or the February 2008 election, which, surprisingly for California, was a pretty big deal. So in my neighborhood, when there's an election, there's signs on everyone's lawns, everyone's wearing buttons, everyone's getting stuff in the mail, everyone knows an election, you can't pick up the phone. It's actually quite annoying right? Because every call is from somebody trying to tell you how to vote. You can't answer the door, right? But in these communities where we were doing this work with these organizations, that wasn't what was happening, right? Except for South LA, and they're kind of excited about Obama. But there was really not this, there's not the same level of engagement with the election. It's almost like, well, yeah, there's an election going on. That's what those white people over there are doing. That's not about us. And so by going into these communities, by calling them on the phones, by walking in their streets, we were saying to people, this election is about you. And when I say to somebody, Jonathan, there's an election on Tuesday. I need you to promise me that you're going to vote. He's being brought into the polity, and he's changing his idea of who he is and thinking, yes, I am a voter. I'm the kind of person who on election day goes and votes. This is something that is about me. And so we get people to redefine themselves as voters. That gets them to change their identity. And we know this is happening, or do we really ever know anything in social science? We're pretty darn sure we know this is happening because of the habit formation effects that we saw. In other words, if I talk to Jonathan for the June 2008 election, but then I don't go back and talk to him again, he's still more likely to vote in November. Voters, so because we did this over so many election cycles in the same state, and everyone in California has a unique voter ID, we can track people over time. We could track them again now and see if they're still voting, right? And so we were able to look at people, well, we mobilized these folks in June 2006. What did they do in November 2008? What about the folks we mobilized in March 2007? What did they do in November 2008? And we found that there is a significant habit formation effect. And again, nothing about these people changed except they got a little older, right? On average, they probably didn't get any richer. They didn't get any more education, right? It's probably pretty much the same person. And yet, their likelihood of voting explodes because they now think of themselves as a voter, right? We mobilize them in June. November comes around. They hear there's an election, and they think, oh, yeah, voting. I know what to do. I'm ready. So there's a lot more that we did. I have 20 seconds left, so I'm just going to leave you this beautiful picture of the cover of the book if you want to read more about it, or if you want to email me and ask me questions. That's how you get out the Latino vote.
I'm going to brag on Melissa and her partner in this effort, Alicia Garcia Bedoya, because this last year they were awarded the Ralph Bunche Award by the American Political Science Association as the best book in political science on race and ethnicity. So I think that's worthy of another round of applause. I'd like to now bring up another friend of mine, Emanuel Pleitez. Emanuel, let's get you set up here. Let's see. Okay.
So I'm gonna show a video. But before I show a video, I'm gonna just quickly give you a little bit of the backdrop in terms of how, kind of what mindset to be in as you listen to and watch the video that I'm gonna show you, and specifically reflecting a couple things that we heard about earlier, especially Rogelio Sainz in terms of how young we are as a population. And obviously everyone knows that we're the fastest growing demographic, right? That's not earth shattering, but the fact that we're so young that within 0 to 9 years old, it's 20% of Latinos are 0 to 9 years old, which is crazy. And that the median age of our population is 27 compared to whites at 42, and actually the median age of the general population is like at 36, 37. So we're 9 years younger than the rest of the country if you're Latino. Now, why is it important? I'm going to talk about running for office. Running for elected office. Why is that important? You could do a bunch of other things, from being a teacher, going in the private sector. And I want to propose to you is that we need more people running for office because that's how you can build power. And building power could be obviously used for a bunch of things. But the thing that we want to, that we've been talking about here today is that we need more of us that have this knowledge, have the real world experiences, listen to people like Pedro Noguera and get inspired, and we want to do good things with it. So if you build power, you can do good things with it. And so I am proposing to you that you need to consider running for office if you've never considered doing it before. Now, who am I? Why am I even standing up here and having the gall to tell you to run for office? My name is Emanuel Pleitez. I was born in South LA, or the former South Central LA, on Adams or West Adams area, if any of you from LA, which is only a few blocks from where 18th Street Gang was founded, and where the riots were happening in the 90s. I actually moved to the east side of LA, the mecca of the Mexican American community, and ended up growing up in the neighborhood of El Sereno. I went through public schools my whole life. I was raised by a single mother who raised my sister and I, and she came across the border pregnant with me, so I made it, barely, by a few months. I have a number of friends who are no longer with us because of gang violence, including my best friend in middle school. And those are the things that I experienced when I was young. However, I had the impression that everyone experienced that was just normal life in the United States of America. But at the same time, I felt that I was giving opportunities because I was going to be able to go to college. I had good teachers that looked out for me. I had a coach, I had a counselor, I had a couple people who really made an impact in my life. I made it to Stanford University. At that point, my world was exposed. I actually wanted to come back to East Los Angeles and teach. That was my goal, because I felt that's where I could make the most impact. But I had a mentor that said, you know what? You have all the qualities to run for office. You have an amazing story, and you don't realize it, but I'm going to tell you. And he just told me, and he looked at me in the eyes, and he says, I believe in you, and you could be the President of the United States. And, I don't know if I'll ever get there, but there was someone who looked at me in the eyes and told me that he believed in me that much. No one else had done that before. And since then, I could admittedly say that my confidence has only increased. My confidence has only increased. Now, I'm 30 years old. I've actually run for office twice. I ran for Congress when I was 26 years old, and I ran for mayor of Los Angeles, city of Los Angeles, second biggest city in the country, just earlier this year. And I'm excited that I may run for office in the future, even though I was battered and bruised after those elections, because that's what happens to you, because your life is out there publicly, and you're at the critique of, in my case, the LA Times and other publications, and quite frankly, fellow Latino politicians in my area who were not so keen to my running. But at the same time, I felt, Jonathan can attest to this in terms of he visited my campaign office, that I was able to inspire a bunch of other younger people who now believe that they can do the same thing. And in that, there's some power. In that, the issues that I advanced and that my campaign was about education, even though the mayor of LA doesn't have anything to do with the educational system, or shouldn't, doesn't have any jurisdiction over it. But that was my campaign, was about education. And when I didn't make it to the runoff, but there was a runoff between the top two candidates, the winning candidate ended up in almost every debate quoting what I was saying about education. Quoting about the dropout factors that we have and how we need to change that and how we need to have an all hands on deck approach and how education is 24/7, not just what happens in our schools. But anyway, I say all that to propose to you that you can make impact even if you don't win for elected office, that people are listening to you, and that we need our voices to be heard. And I think we were talking about messaging earlier. One of the messages that I used in the Latino community was no calles tu voz. No calles tu voz. Or don't let anyone shut your voice down. And that was the theme of my campaign, is that our voices needed to be heard. Whether win or lose, we were going to be heard, and in that there's victory. So I'm going to move to the video just so you could actually see the faces, the smiles, the tears during my campaign, and hopefully that'll prompt more questions in the discussion as we move forward. And I might have a couple minutes after I show this video. Let's see here. Do full screen. And I might have, after the video, I might have a few things. And we got the sound, it's good. All right, I'm just go to the beginning. And I'm going to narrate a little bit so you can kind of see what's happening throughout the campaign, because it was a very eventful campaign. I didn't get invited to the debates early on until 6 months after I campaigned, because I had to show everyone that I raised money, even though I had no political endorsements. But you know, we made do, and you'll see a lot of that, a lot of the faces throughout the campaign. That's the candidate, me, by the way.
I am running for mayor of LA.
Buenas tardes, ¿cómo están? It's a grassroots campaign, the likes of which Los Angeles has never seen.
What makes this campaign unique is that we have a candidate who really cares, who has a lot of ideas, who wants to make a difference, and it's genuine.
So he's one of the organizers. We actually started with 30 full-time organizers 8 months before Election Day that were all getting paid about a couple $100s a month to walk the streets door to door every day, about 5-6 days a week. We were using technology that none of the other campaigns were using, and we thought about all of our organizers as content creators, not just organizers telling people to vote. This is in August in South LA, and walking the streets, and that's my wife, by the way, with the glasses. Everyone had a mobile phone that you could see the map within the phone, and you were able to see exactly what side of the street you were on and how you were actually talking to voters. That's my mother.
I ask you to stand with me, get off the bench, join me in re-energizing LA together.
We had all of our young people came from, there was about half of them that were LA people, and they actually knew where they were in their neighborhoods, but another half actually came from all over the country, who just heard about my campaign and applied, because we set up this fellowship that they would not only work on the campaign 7 days a week, but a couple days out of the week we would actually do fellowship applications and other things that was about their career. So they had not invited us to debate, and that night
right now for the big protest, we're rallying outside
we protested.
the hall of the first televised debate because they didn't allow Emanuel to participate.
So it's- So our high school students that had never worked on a campaign before. They're practicing in the campaign office for the night.
We don't think money should dictate politics. So that's why we're out here demonstrating in support of it.
Means somebody that's supporting the people, means somebody that comes from a community that has been marginalized, it means somebody that has perspective from multiple lenses. He's got the economic perspective, the business perspective, the social perspective, all those perspectives that they will lend value and the credibility to his ability to change Los Angeles.
This is actually the second time that we've not been allowed to participate in the debate. It's the first televised debate that we've been allowed to participate in. This one in particular is tougher because we had such a strong, fundraising performance in the first quarter. We got on the ballot, which performed really strong on the polls, and we have a huge staff here. We've got a campaign office, which is clearly a legitimate campaign that deserves to be heard.
We're only one of two candidates who actually got all those signatures to get on the ballot. The other candidates bought their way in, obviously, because you could just pay for it. This is in the middle of a televised debate. So on ABC, there was actually a blackout on the TV, and the whole news that night was about why in the world there was a blackout in the middle of the mayoral debate, and they talked about so we actually had more time on the news because of our protest.
Thank you. Awesome. And they cannot silence us. Se puede. Sí se puede. Se puede. Sí 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 se puede.
Hi, Jonathan. My name is Laura. I'm calling you on behalf of Emanuel, Pleitez.
So we actually didn't have phones. We had computers that were with the headset, and we were using an online program that allowed us to make calls at 3 to 4 times the rate of a normal person making phone calls. That was the campaign office. We had a local muralist come in and paint a mural for us.
We got 2 months left. March 5th is the day. We got about 25 to 30 full-time fellows who are working here. These are the top kids from top schools around the country. We got kids from Harvard, UCLA, Stanford, all across the country that are working out here 7 days a week nonstop. Thank you very much, Mario. Have a great Happy New Year as well.
And they learned how to fundraise. Every organizer was actually a fundraiser as well. His kid, born and raised in East LA, he ended up becoming my field director for a citywide campaign just a year out of UC Santa Barbara, and had never worked full-time on a campaign, but he learned throughout the campaign how to fundraise and how to just become the actual field director of a citywide campaign. He actually got hired by Garcetti to run his whole Latino operation citywide, so it's pretty awesome. And Garcetti ended up becoming the mayor of LA. So the high school students, just the last thing I'll share, that scene right now where I was speaking with a bunch of students. The students actually, it was similar thing. It wasn't just come and volunteer for the campaign. It was actually, it's going to be an internship program where we're going to help you with your college applications. We're going to do SAT prep. And so we're going to dedicate every week a certain amount of hours so that we can help you with all the things that are happening in your real life. And in exchange, they're volunteering anywhere from 10 to 20 hours a week for the campaign. So we kind of structured all these programs for these young people. We would order pollo loco almost every day because it was the cheapest and it was next door. That and tacos, we'll alternate with a taco stand across the street. So I'll stop there. I think just one of the takeaways from here, look, I didn't win, right? And so you can say, well, what happened? It was so cool campaign, and you did it. You put everything you got. Well, there's other things that you got to deal with in politics. You got to raise money. I got outspent 10-1 by the two people that ended up winning. But our dollars per vote was better than all the other candidates, and we showed something. We showed that you can create a campaign even though no other elected official, no other senior Latino leader in our city supported me. However, they all wanted my endorsement afterward, and I ended up being the first person the week after the primary to endorse, and I endorsed Eric Garcetti, who ended up winning before the other people, because the other people were playing hard to get. And so there's a lesson here in terms of you not being afraid to risk, as long as you do it with integrity and you excite people, you inspire people, and you do it for the right reasons. And because I ended up being that person, the person who ended up, who I endorsed, ended up hiring some of my people, ended up obviously winning, and then appointed me to now being the commissioner for the Los Angeles Fire and Police Pension System, which is a $17 billion fund, and now I'm the first mayoral commissioner appointed. So there's some success, not just because of that, but because of everything that came with it. It's funny, I share that story, especially to folks in the neighborhood where I grew up quite frankly, not being very fond of cops, quite frankly, not liking them. And now I'm managing their money and their retirement money. So there's some silver lining here. But look, at the end of the day, I'm not afraid to run again. And what I've been building is something that is outside of the regular political system, because at the end of the day, what matters is voter contact, is talking to voters and engaging voters. And voters came out to vote for me, not because anybody endorsed me, not because they saw any commercials on me, because we didn't have any money for that, but because we actually went door to door and voted, and we got a good amount of folks to vote for me, even though they saw about $3 million worth of TV ads from the other candidates. So there's ways to get voters, and we didn't win this time, but those voters, some of them will remember me, some of them will. We'll have to remind them about me in the future, and I'm not afraid to do it again. And I hope that anyone here, if they consider running, if they feel they're doing it for the right reasons, if they feel that they're going to do it better than anyone else running, then do it, because things that you didn't expect that are positive can come out of it. And that's what I hope that a lot of you take for it. So hopefully I get a call from you asking for money for one of your campaigns in the future.
There we go.
Thank you.
I'd like to next bring up my good friend and colleague, Sergio Sosa. I have to tell you that a relationship that we've built, much of it is based on a lot of the work that Melissa and our other colleagues in the Latino politics section of the American Political Science Association have been, put out there for us. It's made it very, very easy to kind of know where to go and what to do. And I think the proof will be in the pudding. So, Sergio, it's all yours.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm afraid of using technology. For the first time, I'm going to use a PowerPoint. But what I'm going to talk to you this afternoon is about the last 10 years, how we have been engaging Latinos, Latinas into civic participation. And overall, how through that process, we found the leaders of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 who organized the last march and rally on October 2000, last October 12th. My name is Sergio Sosa. I am from Guatemala. I'm married, have 2 kids. My daughter, she started at UNO this year. And I am the director of the Heartland Workers Center. So 10 years ago, I started organizing Latino Latinas in South Omaha. And one of the first things that I learned as a community organizer here was that there were 2 criteria. One is no organizer ever organize any community. You need to find the leaders, then they need to organize their own community. The second criteria that I learned was, you need to learn how this community, is organized. And through that, how you can disorganize this community and reorganize, with your leaders, this community. And so what I did was I set up meetings, individual meetings, every single day for 6 months. And I organized 950 one-on-ones or individual meetings. And I found how the community was organized in terms of hometown associations. And I found the major issues that people, were concerned of. But also I started, identifying the potential leaders who were going to build a collective power, according to us. And there were 3 issues. One was meat packing plants. The second, soccer fields. And the third, of course, immigration. And I started talking with the leaders about meat packing plants, and they didn't pay attention to me. And it was because I wasn't paying attention to them. I wasn't listening to them. And they said, we want to play soccer, but we don't have any place to play soccer. And I spoke with the wives, and they said, yeah, we want them to play soccer because then they can alleviate some of their energy, and not come, home, angry. So the first thing we did was organize what we call the Latino Soccer League through hometown associations. We found people from Guerrero, from Durango, from Michoacán, from Guatemala, from San Salvador, from all over. And we organized 32 teams. Each team, by that time, had 20 players. And each would be around 650 people that we came to a convention. We spoke with the mayor, we spoke with the Nebraska Soccer Association president, and people who came with their uniforms. And at the end of the day, they gave us 8 soccer fields, the best soccer fields in town that are located in Dutch Park. So that was, people coming from a culture where we lose all the time. Where we see in our countries, people getting dead all the time. Where we cry loud, that exploitation is going on here. That low wages is going here. Line speed, is killing my body. And for the first time, as a collective, the leaders, they won something. They won soccer fields. But at the end, they won themselves. So from that, in that picture is me when I was young, with my son. And from that, we went to the second issue. All of you who are playing soccer, where are you working? Most of them, they work in the meat packing plants. And the first thing that we started organizing is, meat packing plants, soccer teams and meat packing plants playing against each other, to identify who, can play better, who can win, a tournament. But of course, it was a tactical thing to gain names, addresses, phone numbers, to go after the leaders. We were organizing that what we call the worker association. It didn't work. Why? Because we didn't have money. And second, we didn't have the power. So we make a coalition with the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, UFCW, and with them, OTAC, and religious institutions, we were able, between 2000 and 2002, to organize 4 meat packing plants, or 3 meat packing plants and 1 tortilla place. In that picture, in one of the pictures, Julio Gonzalez, who you cannot see there, he organized people there, and he signed 172 authorization cards that we needed. And then the next day, we filed for an election petition. And then the other picture is a rally, outside of the meat packing plant when the election was, and we won that election at Conagra Beef. So leaders were emerging, leaders were learning how to become leaders. From that, through OTAC and religious institutions, it was a national call to organize march and rallies to support immigration reform. And we got into, and we spoke with the meat packing plant owners and construction business people, and people started organizing themselves. For the first time in Omaha, Nebraska, on April 10 of 2006, 20,000 Latinos were marching the streets. 20,000 Latinos. That was great that day. But what we did wrong was, that we just mobilized people. Next day, everybody disappeared. 7 people got fired, and that's it. From that, with the Dr. Alvarado, we thought, let us organize, Latinos, who are eligible to vote. So in 2008, he came up with this idea with his students called Motivare, Motívate para Motivar. And they used this radical image that was the message was unzip it, raise your voice, and go to the polls. And of course, it helps a lot because in 2008, we had, that Obamismo, Mr. Obama was running, and then people went to the polls. So then, it was a cry, from people that our organization looks too white, and we don't have, the power. to decide what we want to do. And it was a meeting where the leaders called me, and they asked me, Sergio, are you willing to resign and build our own organization? An organization that will speak our language, that will understand our culture, and an organization who has been training and developing our leaders. My heart said yes. My mind said, my wife, she's going to kill me. And we went to the leadership, the OTAC leadership, and it was in negotiations. It didn't work, and I resigned. So we went to speak with one of the founders, Nancy Memo, and she said to me, you did take a big risk to cut your salary, and I will give you $25,000 a year for 2 years, and see, if you can do something. So the Heartland Worker Center got born in January 23 of 2009 as a nonprofit organization. OLLAS have been involved in the whole process, imagining and reimagining and recreating leaders, and we organized this training where for the first time we thought, we have the Heartland Worker Center, we start training our leaders, but alone we cannot do it, So we that day we signed a official membership with NALAC, the National Alliance of Latino and Latina Organizations and Caribbean Organizations, I think it is called. And we were combining forces between the local efforts here and the national level. By 2007, not just the Latino population was growing in Omaha, Nebraska, or in Nebraska, but also many associations and nonprofit organizations are raised. And we spent 4 months doing one-on-ones with the leaders and EDs. And then on January 8th of 2011, we have our first meeting with an organization called OLLAS, Organizaciones Latinas Aliadas in Spanish. So, and we made a commitment, to work together, build alliance, and see if collective power can take us to be recognized, to be seated in the table of negotiations, to call senators or public officials to sit with us, and listen to us. And there we have our first meeting, and then the other meeting is a meeting with Senator Norquist, who just was in the launch. We engage ourselves then, through these closing pools. 50% they were closed, and we were fighting with the Commissioner Phipps. But we learned there that we have to make alliance, and not just between our Latinos, Latinas organizations, but African Americans, and also another Caucasian organization, not just from Omaha, but from across the state. The leaders then took us, to let us organize, a GOTV. And of course, we didn't know anything about it. We submit an application to one of the funders for $222,000, and they said, you're crazy. So, and then, okay, let us do it ourselves. So we organized we have 2 objectives, 4 tactics, and 13, 2 objectives, 2 strategies, and 14 tactics. The 2 objectives were, let us organize, GOTV efforts that goes beyond election cycles. Because civic engagement is not about, when you go and cast your vote, and then you forget about it. You gotta keep engaging yourself all the time. And then we use the media, newspapers, and overall radio stations. Because we are Latinos, Latinas, the 2 radios in town, we listen to those radios all the time. And also canvassing. We went to knock doors, and we walked, South Omaha, and we knocked 3,000 houses. And also we made around 10,000 phone calls. So I want to play this video of one of the leaders. The leaders, came up with this idea.
Somos madres, somos ciudadanos.
Somos profesionales.
Somos trabajadores.
Somos parte de esta comunidad y votamos para mantener a nuestras familias unidas.
Y votamos por el futuro de nuestros jóvenes.
El 6 de noviembre, vota. Vota por tu familia.
Voto por mi familia.
Voto por mi familia.
Regístrate ya. Vota por tu familia.
So voto por mi familia. It is, an effort. I vote for my family. That Latinas don't vote for ourselves. Because somebody in my family is undocumented. And if I want immigration reform, I need to vote. Because I am a citizen. So I have to do it. So here is the results of our efforts. Our target, were 8,000 Latinas, eligible voters who never vote in any election. And because of what we did in South Omaha, Ward 4, Precinct 1 to 18, we were able to increase voting participation to 14,000 voters in 2012. Lastly, I want to show to you another video. It is the March and Rally for Dignity and Respect that we organized along with Appleseed and Justice for Our Neighbors and other organizations. But this time we learned the lesson because we marched the streets, organized. What you are going to see, the people you are going to see marching, we know at least 85% of them. We spoke with Elizabeth, she's back there. We spoke with Jessie, she's back there. We spoke with Irma, she's back there. And they were bringing, 10, 20, 50 people each. And when we hold them accountable, because at least we want to march with 1,000 people. And 1,000 people can deliver 2,000 or 3,000. So here is the video.
In spite of what we have suffered and endured for the past 25 years in this country as a people,
Who's that?
10 years ago we would not be here. We would not be having this conversation. We would not be on the map. As African Americans in this country, we have found that our history has been that we have been denied the opportunity to vote.
Malcolm X Foundation.
Not accept a path that does not include the right to vote. It is citizenship with the ability to vote, and nothing else is acceptable. There are no anchor babies among us. There are babies. There are no illegal immigrants. There are immigrants. Let us reform immigration policy now. Let us
to make it possible for them to be here legally.
You are here for a very important message to convey. Together we can. Together we can. Sí se puede.
I think I don't out of time, but I want to close it here, thanking the real heroes here. People who are not here. Some of them are here, like Irma, Elizabeth, and Jesse, and others. But I think we are at the beginning of Latinos, Latinas integrators, ourselves, into this society. And we have been calling the attention with everything that we did. People knows that there are Latinos here. And like somebody else said before, they eat our food, drink our tequila, come to our Cinco de Mayo or Independence Day, celebrations. But we are not equal yet. They are not, treating us, with the level of power that we deserve. And but we are tired of looking for answers, outside from ourselves. Because at the end, we found ourselves. And we can organize ourselves and change things for the future. There are 7,000 eligible voting Latinos in North Omaha that we are going to target, next year. There are 4,000 Latinos in West Omaha. There are 10,000 Latinos in Sarpy County, and more than 29,000 in South Omaha. So we are not the future. I think we are the present. But the present that can combine a collective message under the understanding that we must build power together. And power is the capacity to act. We were not acting before, but we cannot do it alone. Thank you.
I've got someone's keys up here. If you lost your keys, I've got them. Left them by the coffee. So, are they yours? No? Oh, it's a Mercedes-Benz. No, I'm kidding. We have time for a couple of questions. Are they yours? Okay, they are Mr. Freeman's. I have time for a couple of questions if there's anybody who would like to ask. And we have a microphone coming up.
It's inspiring them. It was very nice of you because I think the key was getting that youth, the generation that's coming up. We are getting older. We need to give them the tools to do the things. But one thing that I can mention, though, in this past campaign that we were electing mayors. I had the pleasure to kind of start helping out in South Omaha. I've been helping this community for quite a bit and working with education more than anything. But wanted to do the political part because it's important. My name is Nerys France, by the way, and I work with Partnership for Kids. It's a mentoring program. We work with education, obviously, and I really enjoy my job. But I think education is so important in all aspects. When I was walking our South Omaha streets here in Omaha, campaigning for the mayor, what I learned was our community wasn't educated on what do I need to do to vote. The ones that were able to vote, they didn't know that they had to register to vote. Like, why you guys no stopping in my house to work with the campaign? Obviously, we need to knock those doors as well, but we need to educate them. So I think it's a process. We're getting there, but we need to know this. It's important because I walk those streets, and what you guys were doing is that, knocking those doors, but it's important for everyone to know and tell our community, if you're not registered to vote, you cannot vote. So I just wanted to thank you all, a great job, and just want to give my 2 pennies because I'm really looking forward to our next campaign. We're going to do this together.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, just a comment on that. Yes, we have, a lot of popular education material that we develop, and that have, the candidate profiles, power analysis, where to vote, why to vote, where is your precinct, and also we are using the media and the newspapers, and also the social media to disseminate our message.
Hi, my question is directed at Emanuel. I don't think it's any secret that money kind of dominates our political system. I'm just wondering if you could elaborate maybe. I know you mentioned that you were outspent tremendously. Maybe on some words of encouragement for other people that might be thinking of running, but realizing that without the backing of special interest and large corporations, that their chances really aren't very good.
Sure. No, I appreciate the question. Unless elections are publicly financed, we can't get away with it from the fact that we have to raise money. And I'll get to what I did for fundraising. On one end, although you saw that I trained my staff to actually become fundraisers as well, and that I wanted to make sure that everyone that was working with me understood all the parts of the political campaign. In terms of fundraising, I got outspent a lot, but we still ended up raising. We had a $550,000 budget still, so still sizable enough to pay for that food. We rented 2 5-bedroom houses in South LA where 25 people lived, and we still utilized with the money we had. So what I would say is for anyone that if you're running for office, you still got to raise money, and you got to ask every single person you know, and you got to ask everyone to give you something. Even if it's $1, $5, $10, $100, whatever it is, if they give you once, they're likely to give you again, as long as you stay in touch with them and you show them what you're doing with it. And if you're running for office, this kind of goes back to why you're even running for office. You gotta fundamentally believe that you're gonna make the best use of whatever resources you have available to you. And if you believe that, when you ask someone for money, they will also believe in you. And I think a lot of people, I've had friends that I've advised that were thinking about running for office, and sometimes they almost think it's like, oh, it's something I've always wanted to do is be an elected official. But that's not enough. You gotta really understand the role you're running, what you're running for, and you gotta believe that you're gonna do a better job than anyone else running. And if you do that, you're gonna ask for $1,000, $2,000 from anyone. And they will give you, if they can't give you $2,000, they'll give you whatever they can. And that's what I ended up raising from probably 2,500 people, and average donation was sub $100. Actually, no, it was a lot more, and then we had some matching funds, so it ended up being $500,000 at the end of the day.
Time for one more quick question. Anybody? Well, I want to take this opportunity to thank my panelists. What I think they have done for us is to really help to illustrate not only the capacity but the potential of Latinos as a voting bloc, as vibrant members of the American polity, as a meaningful contribution to what constitutes a democracy in our country. I think that one of the things, and I mentioned it when I was at that rally, that in 10 years we have been able to accomplish a remarkable amount of work here in the Omaha area. Much of it not coming out of thin air, but of really a lot of hard work. And I think both Emanuel's campaign and the work by Sergio Sosa at the Heartland Worker Center is evidence of that, but also the academic work that my Latino politics colleagues have been doing now for about 20, 25 years, very actively, have helped to contribute to our knowledge and understanding. So I want to thank you for this opportunity. I want to thank everybody that was here, and we have to move on to another panel. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.